Welcome back. If you new here, don't forget subscribe my channel. My life took an unexpected turn. My name is Paula and I am years old. I have been a single mother for a long time. I have raised my son alone. His name is Jeremy and he is now 24 years old. We have always been close, just the two of us. We have navigated life's ups and downs together. One evening, something unforeseen happened. Jeremy looked very tired and told me he wasn't well. He had been working a lot and studying hard. He seemed exhausted. I told him he could lie down on my bed if he wanted to rest. The night was cold and our house took a while to warm up, so I covered him with a blanket. At first it seemed normal, just a mother and her son. But then, as I lay down next to him moved closer. He must have been trying to get warm, and I didn't pay it any mind. But he wrapped his arms around me, holding me gently against him like he did when he was younger. I was a little surprised, but I let it happen. He probably just needed comfort. I could see him near me, his position steady. Lying there, Jeremy's slowed down as if he were falling asleep. The room was so quiet, I could hear my own heart beating. It was strange, but also soothing. I didn't move, not wanting to disturb him, and I told myself it was just a mother comforting her son. But after a while he moved, coming even closer to me under the blanket. His arm wrapped around me lightly, and I froze for a moment, uncertain of what I was thinking. Part of me wanted to say something, to get away, but another part stayed still. There was a tension in the air that I couldn't ignore, and I didn't know why I was it. Then something happened that surprised me, something hard under the blanket. It was unexpected, and my heart started to beat faster. I tried to stay calm and remind myself that this was just my son. Maybe he didn't even realize it. I kept lying there, trying to ignore that were beginning to rise in me. I told myself it was nothing. It was just a strange and awkward moment that would eventually pass. But as the minutes went by, I realized things had changed, and I didn't know how to handle the situation. Jeremy stayed close to me. His was steady, but the heat rising between us. I wished I could move, say something light to break the tension, but the words wouldn't come. I was a prisoner of that moment, uncertain of what I was really. Then Jeremy slightly lifted his head to look at me. His eyes held a softness I had never seen before, a look that reassured me and made me nervous at the same time. He didn't say anything, but he seemed to be asking if everything was okay. I tried to smile, hoping it would ease this strange sensation, but it was in vain. It only thickened the silence. Jeremy's hand remained on mine, firm, his thumb stroking mine softly, almost distractedly. It was such a small gesture, but every seemed to awaken something in me that I couldn't ignore. I kept my regular, trying not to show him that my heart was pounding. I didn't know what to do or what to say. So I stayed frozen there, completely wrapped up in this strange connection. In my mind, I told myself this was just a mother comforting her son, nothing more. But in that silence, just the two of us under the covers, my mind kept swirling with thoughts that seemed inappropriate, but that I couldn't chase away. This was my son, but lying so close to him, something deeper, a closeness I didn't understand. A mix of confusion and warmth, an unexpected sensation that left me paralyzed. Jeremy didn't seem to notice my confusion. He simply stayed beside me, his hand moving gently, comfortingly, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. His was calm, his eyes closed, and I wondered if he was falling asleep, but his hand moved up my arm. I shivered. A flush rushed over me, and he opened his eyes, looking straight into mine. There was a question in his gaze, as if he were asking me if this was okay, if I the same unspoken attraction. I flinched, uttered his name, barely able to speak the word. I wanted him to stop, to move away, and create distance, but I couldn't move. The tension between us was too strong, like a silent storm brewing. Neither of us spoke, but the air was charged with unspoken words, with things we couldn't express. Almost as if it were the most natural thing, he moved closer. My heart began to race. My mind raced, but I couldn't bring myself to back. I was torn between my role as a mother and the strangeness that was emerging as he drew nearer. I gasped, and all my thoughts vanished, leaving only this moment between us. Jeremy's hand rested gently on my shoulder, as if. Furthermore, the world around us seemed distant, and I could only focus on his presence, on the steady beat of his heart that I could almost hear. For a moment, I closed my eyes, trying to calm myself. I told myself to back, to break whatever was so heavy. But then, I brushed his hand away, gently pushing a strand of hair from my face. It was a simple gesture, and yet it ached my heart in a way I didn't understand. I opened my eyes and he was there, looking at me with so much gentleness, so much trust. His face was so close I could see every little detail, the tiny ones, the soft curve of his, the way his gaze searched mine. There was a vulnerability in him that mirrored my own, and I could see he was as lost in this moment as I was. We stayed there suspended in silence as if time had stopped. My mind was a whirlwind of questions, doubts, things I didn't understand. But I wasn't drawn to him, this person I had raised, and yet he seemed to be someone totally new in that instant. Just when I thought we would remain frozen in that silence, Jeremy moved slightly away. Breaking the trance, he looked away and let out a nervous laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. This brought me back to reality for a second, making me realize just how close we were. I tried to calm the flood of emotion washing over me, hoping he hadn't noticed it. "Sorry, Mom," he said in a voice full of uncertainty. "I didn't mean to make it weird." He avoided my gaze, and I saw a slight blush on his cheeks, as if he was struggling with the same confusion as I was. I wanted to comfort him, tell him everything was fine, but the words got stuck. I didn't know what to say, and for the first time in a long time, I uncomfortable. Facing my own son, I reached out, placed my hand on his shoulder, and gave him a small smile, hoping it would dispel the tension. "It's okay, Jeremy," I said in a soft, reassuring voice. "It's just that, well, it's been so long. It's just the two of us. Maybe we both feel a little lost." He nodded, and I saw a glimmer of relief in his eyes. Then, just as the tension was beginning to fade, the doorbell suddenly rang, making us both jump, bringing us back to reality, shattering the connection that had formed between us. I got up quickly, my heart still. I headed for the door, grateful when I found our neighbor Paul standing there. He had always been a friendly person, someone I could count on in need. He was smiling, but his gaze on me a little longer than usual, and I realized I was still carrying that strange energy from the time spent with Jeremy. I tried to compose myself, hoping he wouldn't notice anything. "Hi, Paula," he said in a warm voice. "I wondered if you needed anything. I know it's been a bit colder lately, and I can help if you're having heating problems." A wave of relief washed over me, and for a moment I let myself relax. "Thank you," I replied, smiling. "Actually, the house is a bit chilly. I'd really appreciate your help." Paul came in and I saw Jeremy watching us from the hallway. His face was expressionless. I glanced at him and for an instant I saw something in his eyes. A flicker of jealousy, perhaps, though he quickly concealed the expression. I was surprised, wondering if there was more to it than he let on. While Paul checked the heater, he asked me questions about how we were doing at home, and we exchanged a few pleasantries. But I couldn't help glancing at Jeremy, who remained silent, watching us with a strange intensity. His discomfort, which added an extra layer of tension to the room. I hesitated between wanting to make things easy for Paul and being acutely aware of Jeremy's presence. He never left us. After a few minutes, Paul turned to me with a smile. "Okay, Paula. Call me if you need anything else." I thanked him, and when he left the house, the tension between Jeremy and me became even more palpable. I closed the door and turned towards him, seeing him standing there with a serious expression. "You okay?" I asked Jeremy, trying to understand what was on his mind. He shrugged and looked away. His voice was low. "Yeah, I'm fine. I just didn't expect Paul to stop by, that's all. I wanted to talk to him to try and understand what was happening between us, but before I could add anything, he walked past me and headed to his room. Without another word, the door closed behind him, and I was left standing there with a strange mix of relief, confusion, and a persistent that something had been left unfinished. I stood there staring at Jeremy's closed door, a void I couldn't grasp. I understood everything that had just happened, what we had shared, the way he had acted when Paul was there, and this unspoken tension that seemed on the verge of exploding again. I went to my room and sat on the edge of the bed, replaying every moment in my head. I knew I couldn't ignore this forever, but I also didn't know how to face it. Then I heard a light knock on the door. My heart skipped a beat. I wondered if it was Jeremy coming back. "Come in," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Jeremy opened the door and entered the room, his face still unreadable. He came to sit beside me, his eyes downcast on his hands. We sat in silence for a moment, the air heavy with everything left unsaid. "But Mom," he finally began, his voice barely a whisper, "I don't know what's going on. I'm sorry if I made things weird earlier." He struggled to find his words. I placed my hand on his, hoping to reassure him a little. "Jay, it's okay. Maybe we're both a little lost right now. It's been so long. It's just the two of us, and sometimes things can get confusing." He nodded, his eyes still fixed on his hands. Then he looked up at me, his eyes filled with emotions I couldn't completely decipher. "But it's different," he said softly, almost as if he were afraid to admit it. I didn't know how to react. My heart tightened with the same confusion, and for a moment, I considered him into my arms and telling him everything would be okay, but I didn't know if that was what he needed or if it would complicate things even more. So I stayed there, letting the silence speak for us both. Finally, I took a deep and looked at him. "Jeremy, maybe we just need to take a step back and think about things. It's okay to feel confused," I said gently, "but it's also okay to need space to figure things out." He nodded, but then, in a surprising gesture, he rested his head on my shoulder like he did when he was younger. It brought me comfort, but with that strange, undeniable undercurrent. My heart softened, and my arm went around him, holding him gently against me in a gesture meant to be comforting, even though I knew the issues between us weren't completely resolved. For the first time in a while, it is as if perhaps we didn't need to have all the answers right away. We could figure things out step by step, discover them together, even if it was complicated. And as we sat there simply leaning against each other, of calm came over me. A silent glimmer of hope that, whatever happened, we would find our way through it together. We stayed sitting like that, quietly, as if all the confusion between us could disappear simply by staying close. But I knew it wasn't that simple. The closeness was comforting, but also bewildering, like a surface neither of us could ignore. After a while, Jeremy lifted his head and looked at my mother's serious face. "I don't know what to do about this," he said, his voice slightly trembling. "I don't want to complicate our lives, but I can't ignore it either." The words hung in the air like a question he didn't dare ask out loud. I swallowed, desperately, searching for what to say. But before I could answer, there was another knock on the door. We both jumped, startled and bewildered. We looked at each other, taken aback. The knock was firm, almost urgent, as if the person on the other end knew something was going on. Suddenly nervous, I got up and went to open it. When I opened it, Paul was there again, looking concerned. "Paula, sorry to bother you," he said. "I just wanted to check if everything was all right. You seemed a bit off earlier." I glanced at Jeremy, who was watching us intently. His face was still impassive. I tried to keep my voice calm as I replied, "Thank you, Paul, but everything's fine. We're just having a quiet evening." Paul looked at me and then glanced thoughtfully at Jeremy. "All right, but remember, I'm right next door if you need anything later." When he was gone, I closed the door and turned towards Jeremy, who continued to watch me. With the same intensity, he stood up and walked slowly towards me, and my heart started beating hard again, the air between us heavy with all that remained unspoken. But just as he got near me, he stopped, his expression changing as if he were wrestling with himself. "Maybe we shouldn't rush things, Mom," he said softly, his voice trembling. "Maybe we need time." My heart tightened with the same conflicting, "You're right, Jeremy. We both need to think about all this without rushing." He nodded, and we stood there, close but cautious, as if we were on the edge of something we couldn't control. It was an end, but also a beginning, something we couldn't quite define. And as he went back to his room, I wondered what the future held for us.